What's up, bud? It's Rob. This is Apparel Success. And in this video here, what I want to do is share with you 5 tips on how to write a killer story for your brand that captures attention, creates value for your clothing brand, and actually converts your website traffic into customers. Here it is. No dilly-dallying here, let's jump right into this. Tip number 1 for writing a really solid story for your clothing brand is to be less logical and be more humorous, creative, loose. Dive into the emotion of your brand and don't get caught up in the logical, our brand started in California, then we went here, then we did this. You want to be loose with your clothing brand. That's the best part about running a clothing brand is that you can actually, describe your clothing brand with color and just give your clothing brand whichever type of feel you want to give it. And it doesn't have to be this logical thing, okay? You look at Johnny Cupcakes, right? His brand is the least logical thing in the world. It makes no sense at all. But because he's just injecting fun and positive emotions, his brand story is really bright and people get attracted to it and want to buy his product, okay? So be less logical in writing your brand story and actually just inject as much humor, creativity, playfulness into your story as possible. Tip number 2 for writing a killer brand story is to dive deep into your brand concept and pull out the nuggets of value that you actually want to share to your audience, okay? With our brand concept, we don't want to share fluff in our story, okay? We want to go deep into our brand concept, think about exactly what we're trying to represent, and then focus on the specific parts of our brand that actually make us unique and focus on hammering those out in our story, okay? So dive really deep into your brand concept and think about what makes you unique and highlight those things in your brand story. Focus on that. Tip number 3 when it comes to writing a sick brand story is to keep it short, okay? And this is the biggest problem that I see with most of the brand reviews that I do is on their about page, they write way too much about their clothing brand. People read the first paragraph and then they're like, right? And you don't want people to be falling asleep or be bored when they're reading your brand story. You want to be able to capture their attention, show them who you are, show the value of your brand, show them your uniqueness really quickly and in a short few paragraphs, maybe a couple paragraphs. You don't want to run on and on, okay? So keep it short. Tip number 4 here is to not include yourself in the brand story unless including yourself in the brand story actually offers your brand more value, okay? You don't want to be egotistical here and you don't want to be, adding yourself to the brand story just to, stamp your name on it, okay? Only add yourself to the brand story if your founder's story is extremely unique and actually adds to your whole brand image, and that's what you're trying to do with your brand, okay? I know East Coast Lifestyle, his founder's story was basically his entire brand, okay? And that's what actually allowed him to blow up because he's this East Coast kid who went to school on the East Coast and he wanted to create a clothing brand that supported the East Coast culture, right? But for other brands, like our brand, for example, we don't necessarily hammer in on the founder story. We don't talk about ourselves very much because we're simply just creating a brand representing rural Canada. And we don't necessarily need to hammer on that founder's story as much, okay? So be really cautious about actually including yourself in your story. Don't do it for egotistical reasons. Only do it for what's at the benefit of your clothing brand. Tip number 5 is to subtly self-qualify in your brand story. Inside of our brand story, we subtly throw in things like, Trevor Wilson of a big Canadian TV show that wore our product. We subtly throw in, Classified, a big Canadian rapper who's worn our product. And we don't just necessarily list all of the celebrities who have worn our product, but we subtly throw it into our story so that it actually creates more value and it creates the perception that this brand is actually credible. And you might not have a lot of big celebrities wearing your clothing yet, but you can throw in something like an article that you guys got in, or how many followers you have really subtly into your brand story. Whatever offers your clothing brand more value. Think about those types of things that you've been able to accomplish for your own brand already. Think about subtly incorporating those into your brand story so that you can actually offer more value while people are reading your story. There you have it. Those are 5 really powerful tips for you when it comes to writing a brand story for your clothing brand. And I want you to take your time with this. We've developed our story. We're constantly tweaking our story as we grow our brand. And this isn't something that is static, that you put in place once and it just stays the same. as you grow forward, as you gain more accomplishments, you can always constantly tweak your story and add to your story. And, you know, as time goes by, just running a clothing brand, you'll constantly, you know, get a better sense of your identity as a clothing brand and work that into your story as much as possible. Okay, you'll uncover who you are. Just like as a person, you know, as you get older, you start to understand who you are more. When you run a clothing brand, you might come out with one idea, and, you know, 10 years later, by the time you're making millions of dollars, hopefully, you know, that brand is something completely different than when it first started. Okay, so you definitely want to be fluid with it, and, you know, do your absolute best to figure out who you are and communicate your value. Now, I want to let you know there's only a few days left to use the discount code INSTASUCCESS to hop into my online course, Instagram Marketing for Clothing Brands, and save $100 when you do so, okay? The discount code INSTASUCCESS expires on July 1st, so you only have a few more days. If you're interested, hop into that course now while you can get it at a discounted price. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching this video, and I want to tell you about the closed Facebook group that we have going on for Apparel Success. There's a link in the description below. Follow that link. Join us in the group. We're a bunch of clothing brand owners all in there to support each other and answer each other's questions. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.